Now we're going to go through the process of creating something like this. Okay, it's going to be a nice card, which, as you see, we're going to be using throughout this entire application. So let's go ahead and put together this structure so that we are done with it. That way we can have it set up, and then we can start putting the data and all the things that we need to make it look like this. All right, so this is not going to help us, but at least we know that things could work. And one question you may have, why is this taking all of this space? Well, the reason being is because if we go back to our main screen, we added this expanded here. That's what we're returning. And so when you add an expanded, that means then, and we said the flex is 1, so it's taking up the entire space. If we were to go ahead and add another expand at some point, so let's say right about here, I'm going to just go ahead and do it real quick here so you can see. I can say expanded. Let's give a child of a column. Okay, why not? Just so I can show you here, because this is important. Children. Give it children column. That's why it wasn't giving me what I needed. All right, and then I'm going to give expanded here, or actually flex, I should say, flex of 3, like this. Let's save and see what's going to happen. You can now see that things have changed because I gave more space for this expanded at the bottom here. So it takes up the 3, takes up 3 times as much as 1. You can see now everything went up. So in this case here, this entire row, it kind of shrank. The space shrank. That's one thing to understand when it comes to expanded. They're very helpful. You can control essentially everything that you want to put on screen. All right, we can leave it as it is right now. In fact, I'm just going to put 2 for now, but we'll get back to that. All right, let's focus on creating this structure here, something like this, which we will call reading list card. We'll start afresh by creating inside of our widgets. So there it is, our widgets there. I can go up here and say plus, but again, we are masters of our code editor here. I can say Control Shift P or Command Shift P on Windows, on Mac that is, create a new file, and this is going to be called reading list card.dart. Very good. It's an empty file. It's always nice because we get to do all the damage. Okay, I'm going to create a stateless, so STL, I did stateless widget, give it a name. It's going to be reading list card, and let's go ahead and import, of course, material. There we go. Now the idea of this reading card as a class, if you will, it has all these properties. So if you look closely, we have the image, we have this text, another text, we have this nice details, and we have this other item there, we have these. So there's all these things that we need to account for. Now, because we are creating literally a class, we're going to pass a few attributes, or a few fields, right? The first one is going to be final string image, because it will need, every reading list card will need an image. Okay, I'm going to say final again, string, need a title of the book that will represent, right? I'm going to continue. I'm going to call the author like this. Final, I'm going to create a double here, call rating, and then button text, which we'll see later. It's going to be the title of each button, and then I'm going to pass also here a book object, because we are going to be able to extract all of these other fields from a book object. So might as well pass that as a class field. Okay, and then we're going to use this final boolean is book read. We may or may not use, but it's nice to have it. And then we're going to pass here a function. So this is really interesting if you've never realized this. You can actually pass functions so that they can be through your classes. The way you do it, because a function is a type, you say function as such, right? And then in this case, I'm going to say press details. I'm going to create another one called function type as well, called press read or read. Okay, some of these we'll not use, but I just want to give you a full picture. Now all this is red because these are final, which means they must be initialized. So if you just click on either one of these, say command period, it's going to say create constructor for finals. Yes, indeed, that's what we want to do. So click enter, and there we go. So I'm going to save this So it lined them up like this. All right, now we need to import the book class or package in this case, and there it is. The first thing, of course, luckily we have the container, which is exactly what we would need. So we're going to create this structure here. So put first the container at the top. And a container, you've seen this many times, a container allows us to put whatever we want. So it's like a canvas, if you will, the most basic canvas. Let's go ahead and pass a child. Now, what we want to do is we want to create a stack. A stack will allow us to stack, as the name implies, things onto this container. The beauty of having a stack is that we can have more control as to how or where all of these other widgets are going to be placed. A stack as its children, or as the child of a container as such. Okay, a stack, of course, allows us to pass the children. So any widgets we want, we can pass there, all of them there. So now we are going to pass a positioned widget, because a position widget will allow us to specify exactly where to put things on a stack. Remember, if you put a stack and I start putting widgets inside of this children list here, what would happen is everything is going to be on top of each other. In some cases that's desired, but in our case, not necessarily, right? Because we want to stack things around, but make sure that we also are putting things separately. So that's why we're going to put first, add a positioned widget as such. Allows us to pass something. In this case, a child, which is a container, the actual thing that we're going to see. Well, it doesn't have to be a container, but it could be any widget essentially, right? The child of this position. So we're going to pass a container because, as we know, container saves the world. Okay, so this container is going to have a height, okay, go of 244. Now, these are the heights that I know that work, but you can always play around with. But for now, let's just keep as it is. And then we're going to pass a decoration because we want to make things beautiful, right? We're not crazy people who don't know what beauty is. We want to make sure that things work perfectly and look great. I'm going to put a box decoration or box decoration as such, and I'm going to pass a color. The color here is going to be colors that white, and then I'm going to pass a border radius. I'm going to use border radius. Circle or circular that is, and pass about 29 because I want this to have very nice round edges, like you see there later. And next, what I'm going to do, we're going to pass what we call the box shadow attribute. So we're going to say box shadow attribute. So this allows us to create some sort of offsets and put radius and put some colors so that we have this very nice, as you see here, it's got this very nice, if you look closely, kind of shadows that is around this item. Okay, so that's achieved by using a box shadow. All right, a list, let's put there our colon or our comma, and I'm going to pass a box shadow object, a widget, and then I'll pass offset. So how much, what direction, and what is the direction I'm going to offset this shadow. So I'm going to say off, pass the offset object as such, and this one requires a few parameters. Okay, so if you hover over, it says here creates an offset. The first argument sets the difference x, so dx, so the left to right, and the horizontal, which is the left and right, so horizontal component, and the second sets the dy, right, which is the vertical. So for the horizontal, we're going to pass 0, and the y, we're going to pass 10 to give that offset. So no offsetting on the horizontal, but offsetting on the top to bottom. And then we need to pass here, okay, the blur radius, right? I'm going to say blur radius is going to be about 33. Hover over if you want to understand more. It says creates a box shadow, which is exactly what we want. So hover over again. By default, let's go back here. It says here by default, if I can get this to work, by default the shadow is solid black with 0 offset, blur radius, and spread radius. So you can go crazy and finding other properties there, but these are okay. 33. And then we're going to pass a color, right? We need to pass some sort of a color that will get what we want. I'll say color I'm going to call this K shadow color, which we haven't created. This is probably a good time for us to have some colors that we'll be using throughout this app. So we are going to create a constant. Let's go back, models, just close all this down so we don't have all of this inside of our lib. So click there. I'm going to do something different now. Click there, create a new folder, call this constants. And inside of that, we're going to create a new file. You guessed it, call it constants.dart. So it's always nice to have a file called constants, because you can put all the constants that you need that will be used throughout your app. Okay, it's always a good idea. So I'm going to just copy and paste a few constants, especially color constants that we have that we're going to be using. Okay. Now here's the thing. So I paste all of these colors and I gave all these names. Okay, so we can just invoke them. Now we're going to have an issue here because it says here, let me hover over, it says the color isn't defined. We need to import the library that defines the color. So let's go ahead and just import the Dart UI. That would work. So we have our util, or constants, I should say, that which we can use. So now if I go back to our reading list card, I can now just import that package, that color, so I can use that color. And going back here, you can see these colors to the left here. We have in the gutter, as we call it, we have the representation of those colors, so you know exactly what you're dealing with, what you're using. Now you should have access to all of these colors anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But essentially what we're doing, we invoking the color class and pass in its instructor the hex code, the hex color, so that we can get that color. Okay. Continuing here, in our positioned, we just passed a child right away. Now the whole idea of having the positioned widget is so that we're able to control ourselves, right? Everything. So even though we're going to pass a few fields here or a few properties that are, you would assume that they should just be at that default number, but we're going to do it anyway because you must do this when you have position. So we are forcing or telling it where to be. Well, on the left, we want this to be at 0, and on the right also at 0. And also, let's make sure that inside of our container, this main container here, we're going to set a few things. First of all, we're going to make the width to always be about 202. And while we're here, we're also going to pass in some margins just to get things looking good. Edge insets as such, I'm going to say only. And then, so I can say left is going to be about 24. And I know these numbers because I've done this, but you can always experiment. And bottom 0. So there's no margin at the bottom. All right. So we're making progress. Of course, we're not seeing anything yet. And I know that can be a little bit frustrating. But right now, we're just constructing this class and then we're going to use it once it's done.